Hello, friends. It's Dr. Bill here. As many of you know, as part of our online recorded reading and writing training that's going on from now until the test in April for both elementary and secondary teachers who signed up, one of the many skills we covered and we just finished was the artistry of being able to take a revising sentence content that needs to be improved. Now, when you're doing a short constructed response, revising, it's worth 1 point. And I want to share this because many of you are new to reading and writing, or you're not part of my recorded training group who is getting all of these lessons and materials. So the three types of questions your students can get in a open-ended text entry format is a sentence that has repetition or redundancy needs to be removed. And so I have my arm here. Arm typically in most schools across the US stands for add, but I use green, a bracelet to put something in, a word, a phrase, a transition, a sentence, an effect, a cause. Remove red. If you remove something and replace it with something else, red and green. Or move. Yellow, because we're not taking anything out or putting anything in. All we're doing is changing the order or the organization of the words. Something. So we don't use substitute in Texas, but I went ahead and put it because I don't just sell my materials here, I sell them all over the place. And so I have that in there for those of you who have states that use the word substitute when you're changing the content. So the big difference between reading and revising is this. Revising is improving the content by adding, removing, replacing, or moving something, a sentence inside one piece of selection. This could be a paragraph. This could be, I love you, the introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And so I would be showing you how to use this structure to teach revising to improve the content or to teach reading where you're understanding the content. And so whenever you're doing reading, sometimes you have to do what I call infer, rubbing my fur there. It's basically reading between the lines. If we're doing writing, you have to explain, and I have my hands out like wings. Explaining is writing between the lines. They give you text, they give you evidence, and you have to figure out an idea based on the topic that's been assigned. You have to use evidence that you explain in some way, and then you have to have an ending for your essay. But the one we're going to focus on today is my short constructed response for revising practice test that I sent to all of you who signed up. And all of the questions will be in either this format, removing repetition, changing the order or the organization of words to improve the content because it's something that's either more effective or the most effective, a better way or the best way, or to combine sentences. And combining is yellow because we're not adding or removing content, we're just changing the order of the words. So in combining, I sing a little song called Come Together Right Now. And so with that in mind, let me show you question one from my elementary practice passage that I made for you guys. So here is the title page, basically, and it just reminds you that in Texas, if you are from Texas, you're going to add, remove, replace, or move something. If you are outside of Texas, then you can also say, we're going to add, remove, replace, move, or substitute. Okay? So when you see the italics portion, they always will either have the word correction for editing or the word revision for revising. And there's the word revision right there. And so what I did was basically so that I could have a lot of oomph wrapped into one tiny little package, almost every single one of these sentences here needs revising, needs to have its content improved. So the idea is because we normally only improve the content in maybe one or two or at the most three sentences, you might teach your students go to the question first or to the, uh, in this case, our short constructed response. It says, sentence one needs to be revised. Okay. Sentence one needs to be revised. And so you can typically do the strategy, um, the the highlighting, sentence one. There it is there. You see if it lets me. Oh, no. I need to do the shading. Undo that. Erase. Erase. There we go. Um, I don't know why it's not letting me. I want to draw. I want to draw a shaded rectangle. Let me see if it lets me. Sentence one. Oh, there it goes. Sentence one needs to be revised. That's what I was trying to do. Okay. Rewrite sentence one in a clear and effective way. And so in order to get a point, it has to be clearly sticking with the information that was given. And it also has to be a complete thought for the most part. Okay. I'm gonna get rid of that because every time when you're doing Zoom, it leaves the mark behind. So let me go ahead and look at sentence one with you. And the cool thing about my PDFs is that unlike the state, you can highlight the text that's being asked about, copy it, and then take it back to your text box, paste it in there, and that way you don't have to go back and forth. Now, if you are the kind of schools that if you're going to be practicing with the benchmarks or the online tests, you can make sure the kids have the box and the sentence that's being revised side by side, as you can see my hands there. Okay, so when you read it out loud, you're going to hear that it sounds a little bit weird. Something doesn't sound right. So, because revising is improving content, not conventions, a lot of people don't pay attention to the grammar skills that uh, are needed to write a sentence. And that's a problem because editing and revising have about half the points each in elementary. You get about 8 revising and 8 editing questions. In middle school, 9 and 9. In high school, 11 and 11. So it's a lot of questions. So a lot of teachers, a lot of schools have me come and do trainings on editing, revising, and the essay. And they'll sometimes include the short constructed response for reading as well. Okay. So let me read it first, but I'm going to verbalize the capitalization and the punctuation because it's there. Capital, from the freezer one morning, comma, my daughter, apostrophe S, contraction, the fiancé belongs to my daughter, fiancé, accent, Capital Jeremy was getting some breakfast tacos, period. So what I recommend that you do is take a look at each part of the sentence and separate it like you would the pieces in a puzzle. Okay? So we have capital, and you might even to remind your students when they put it back in to make sure that they capitalize it when they write their uh, revision. Capital, so I want to make sure I don't take that capital away, and then I'll remove that when I'm done. From the freezer one morning, comma, my daughter's fiance. So that's basically his title. Jeremy, capital Jeremy, is his name. And what was he doing? The what was uh, getting some breakfast tacos. That's the what. And then again, like you see here, I separated the period. So you can sit there and play around with that. But one way that I came up with for my reading and writing recorded training teachers is to come up with an activity where I take the sentence that's given to us and I actually put it in separate boxes. So this activity, as you can see there, is called Around the Words in 8 Cool Ways. It has the sentence, the way it was presented to us, from the freezer where one morning when my daughter's fiance, Jeremy, who was getting some breakfast tacos, what? Okay. So as you can see here, the first box says shift, size, and shape. The reason I have that is because I don't want to forget to put that. So when you're using a keyboard, the only way you're going to get a capital letter is if you hold the shift button down and it will change the size and the shape of that first letter. Don't put caps lock because then everything will be capitalized. And then for those of you who teach editing rules, underline capitals, proper nouns, and titles and first words. So the reason we need to capitalize here is because it's the first word in a sentence. So then I broke it down, sort of like each detail in the piece of a puzzle, and the comma is separated. So you can rearrange these, and that's perfectly fine. But what I'm going to do is show you a different way. You can either have every student get a copy of this when you're first learning the skill of best revision, changing the order or the organization, cut them out like I did here, and then you'll have to change the order around until it makes sense. Another way is each of your students, you can have 8 volunteers and they will each hold one of these, and you can make it on big 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper or whatever size, legal size, if you have them. Each paper can have this, and the students will get in different order. I call that a I call that who's on first, where you just change the order of the kids and they hold out their little details. Okay, so when we read it from the freezer one morning, it sounds to me like the way it's written here is that Jeremy is in the freezer. So I've got to try and figure out here this detail from the freezer. Is the morning in the freezer? I don't think so. Is my daughter's fiance in the freezer? No. Jeremy, the fiance, in the freezer? No. Were some tacos in the freezer? Yes. And so we go together like mana mana mana, however that song goes. I have to figure out how to get this detail, the where, with this detail, the what. Okay. But before I do, I want to talk to you about introductory phrases. Whenever you don't have a subject or a predicate, you just have wheres and whens like this. From the freezer is a where, one morning is a when. Because that introductory phrase has 5 words, you would typically need to set it apart with a comma like we did here. Okay. If you were to say one morning, capital one morning, comma, my daughter's fiance, Jeremy, was getting some breakfast tacos. Because that phrase is short, it's just a couple of words, usually with one, like yesterday, comma. That comma is optional. So typically speaking, and this happened in the 4th grade one time where in the passage, the comma was there, but in the answer choices, that comma was no longer there because it changed the way that the sentence was written, kind of like what we're going to see here. Now, if you leave that detail out, that's removing content, and we know that we cannot do that. So we have to have that in there. So what are some ways that we can do that? We can say one morning, comma, and that's a shorter phrase, capital one morning, comma. So that comma is optional. I can either leave it or I can take it out. My daughter's fiance, more about that person, Jeremy, from the freezer was getting tacos. That doesn't sound as good as this, was getting some breakfast tacos from the freezer, period. So that's one way. And if your students are thoughtful enough, they can come up with some different ways. As long as tacos and freezer, these two pieces of the puzzle stay close together, then other ways can make sense. So let's try another one, perhaps. Capital, shift, size, shape. My daughter's fiance, Jeremy, so I'm going to remove the comma for now and see if I don't even need it anymore, was getting some breakfast tacos, lowercase, from the freezer one morning, period. If I do that, then I don't know, I don't need the comma anymore, and so I can remove it. Now, I do want to say, since I have this one open now, what some students have been doing is they add a word or a phrase, or they substitute um, one day. Well, since morning is part of the day, they would probably allow that because it's something similar or means something similar. Uh, or you can say if they add the word early one morning. So uh, it would be something like this. When my daughter's fiance, Jeremy, was getting some breakfast tacos from the freezer early one morning. Because they have been allowing content that doesn't change the overall meaning, then don't take away the point if the student can do that without changing. Now, for you advanced teachers who have students higher level, um, you might start with the subject, Jeremy, the person who's doing the action in the sentence, and then you can set it apart with a comma because you're going to tell us more about Jeremy. Jeremy, comma, my daughter's fiance, comma, was getting some breakfast tacos, lowercase, from the freezer one morning, period. And so in secondary, whenever you decide to tell a little bit more about a person, like we're doing there, that's acceptable, but you typically would separate the fiance part from the getting tacos, so that you can realize that my daughter's fiance detail goes with Jeremy, uh, to support who this person is. Okay. So that's how I believe you would do it. That's three different ways. And so I'll come back to the sentence in the computer, and probably the easiest one might be my daughter's fiance, Jeremy. Rid of that comma because we won't need it for this one. Was getting, moving that last yellow piece up here, getting some breakfast tacos from the freezer one morning. So since you're letting me know when it was being done at the end, you no longer need that comma that was taking up one space in the box. But just a reminder, like I said, sometimes a student will add something that's similar or a synonym or something that means the same thing. Like, I don't know if it would be acceptable, but I was, as I was looking at this sentence here, this uh, in the freezer was getting some breakfast tacos in the freezer. You're getting them from the freezer is the better way, but the kids might write from the fridge because it's possible they could be in the fridge, but the probably safer bet would be to keep the important content the same, the subject verb agreement. Capitalization, you can make mistakes. So let me show you what would still get a point. And I don't really like it, but here's what they're saying. They're saying because this skill is an improving content skill, if the sentence looks like this with no capitalization or punctuation, it would still get the point. My daughter's fiance, Jeremy, was getting some breakfast tacos from the freezer one morning. No period, no nothing. It would still earn the point because the content is still there. If they make mistakes on spelling, okay, um, that would still earn the point. For example, the homophone one morning, you would assume that the graders would be able to infer they just have a problem with understanding uh, that homophones, yes, they sound the same, but they don't mean the same thing. And so, just wanted to make that clear that this here would still have earned the point based on the revising rules that only check if you're improving the content by changing the order of the words. So that's my activity. I hope you like it. Uh, I will be doing back and forth the secondary one next. Let me know if you have any questions, um, depending on where you're watching. Take care. God bless.